Hi everyone, welcome to Lesson 5, Discovery of the Atom. In keeping with our keywords of atom, element, positive, negative, electrons, orbit, nucleus, neutrons and protons. Pause the video now and complete the 8 questions on for the knowledge check. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to do the answers in green pen. So, question 1, how did scientists know the elements were different? That's because they had different masses. How are the elements arranged in the modern periodic table? Atomic number. Octave is the pattern of 8, which you would have done last lesson. Scientist who used octaves in his table was John Newlands. Mendeleev did with unknown elements. He left gaps. Mendeleev noticed about the properties and that the properties were the same properties. He created the periodic table in 1869, and the group that wasn't originally considered was group 0. Give yourself a score out of 8. So, today we've got 2 key things to look at. We're going to look at the discovery of the structure of the atom, and then we're going to look at the main parts of the atom. Okay, so the first scientist we need to have a look at is John Dalton, and in 1803 he believed that atoms were tiny spheres with no smaller parts. Okay, and that's why the word atom originates from the Greek word atomus, which means indivisible. Okay, so atomus meaning indivisible. So, our next scientist is J.J. Thompson in 1898, and he discovered the electron. Key fact. And the electron is a subpart of an atom, and he also proposed this plum pudding model, and that meant that the negatively charged electrons were embedded in a positively charged nucleus. So if you have a look at the bottom of the page, this is a rough diagram of the plum pudding model. So these are the plums, and they are the negatively charged electrons, and they are encased in the pudding essentially, which was positively charged, or thought to be positively charged. Okay, so you have your negative electrons and the positively charged nucleus. Okay, Rutherford and Marsden in 1911, they did something different. They fired atomic particles at pieces of gold foil. The evidence showed that they were scattered, these atomic particles were scattered in various directions. So therefore Rutherford proposed that the nucleus was dense and positive, and that is what caused the scattering, and the electrons orbited around the outside. And this atomic model now replaced the plum pudding model. So if we have a look at the top of the next page, you can see a slightly different diagram with the dotted line representing the electrons and this part representing the nucleus, which was positive. Electrons were still negative. Okay, using that information, have a go at the knowledge check back on the previous page. Pause the video, use the notes to complete the questions. Okay, welcome back. I'll go through the answers as always using my green pen. So atom in Greek means indivisible. Charge of an electron is negative. Charge of the nucleus the charge of the nucleus is positive. The model J.J. Thompson proposed was the plum pudding model. What happened to the fired particles? Well, they were scattered. And the proposal for the electrons for Rutherford was that they orbited the nucleus. Give yourself a score out of 6. All of that information was in the notes that we had previously looked at and the key information that we had highlighted. Okay, moving on then. Another scientist was Niels Bohr, 1922, and he developed the atomic model to show that the electrons orbited around the nucleus at specific distances, and these were called energy levels or a shell. James Chadwick, 1931, provided the evidence to show there was the existence of neutrons within the nucleus. So we've gone from the nucleus being dense and positive to now the nucleus having neutrons. So now the nucleus is made up of two types of particle, positive protons and neutral neutrons, and they have a similar mass. You do need to know these scientists and what models they came up with and about the models, so it's these are key facts that we need to learn. Turning over to the next page then, so this diagram here is the modern atomic model. Okay, and we're just going to label it now. So, this part here in the middle we label as our nucleus, and it contains protons and neutrons. P for proton, P for positive, N for neutron, N for neutral for the charge. These two X's are called electrons, and they have a negative charge. and the electrons are on the shell which surround the nucleus. And that information is just summed up here. This 0 just means that it has a neutral or no charge. Size, we prefer the word mass, as we all know in science. So make sure you've got that diagram labelled and that you know it. Okay. On the next page there is an activity that I want you to leave blank for now and go on to the next page and complete the knowledge and application check. Again, questions. However, don't do question 10. Pause the video now and complete the activity. Welcome back. Hopefully you've managed to do those questions. Let's have a look at some answers. So, define atom in Greek, indivisible. The charge of an electron is negative. The charge of the nucleus is positive. The model that J.J. Thompson proposed for the atom was the plum pudding. The particles that were in Rutherford's experiment were scattered. Rutherford's proposal for the electrons was that they orbit around the nucleus. The charge of the proton is positive. The charge of a neutron is neutral or no charge. Each energy level has a maximum capacity. The lowest energy level has a capacity for 2 electrons. Suggest where a third electron might go. So because you can't do any more on the first shell, the third electron would have to go on a new shell or energy level. The main points from today's lesson are that you need to learn the scientists of who invented or who discovered the atom. Okay, so learn scientists and models. And the main parts of the atom are your protons, neutrons and electrons. And the summary table underneath this diagram and this information needs to be learnt, because in lesson 6 we move on to working out the number of protons, electrons and neutrons, and as such we start drawing the structure of the atom, which I will go through in 2 parts. But this now brings us to the end of this lesson.